it's Tawny and Allana. We're here to answer or kind of ask Allana some questions about something really, really awesome, or could potentially be not awesome, I guess, depending on how you take this, but very helpful nonetheless. So I've got just a few questions that I'll ask them, and we will kind of take a little bit of a look inside their thought process and mind, and hopefully some of this will kind of help you. So this video is about not being interested in partner sex, which I think is something that can really happen to anybody. Like, you know, and yeah.
For a lot of different reasons.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, describe a time where you were not interested in partner sex. Like,
yeah, actually, kind of at the moment, and often in my life, on and off, I am not interested in partnered sex. As someone who is always healing from sexual trauma from my past, I tend to, my libido and interest in sexual things with other people tends to really wax and wane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say
right now. Yeah, absolutely. So you're saying kind of right now you're going through it. Why did you take a break from partner sex? Like, why was it important to you to kind of step away from that? And yeah.
Mm-hmm. So because it is for me personally, because it is like an on and off thing, I don't necessarily even take explicit breaks where if like in my partnership, for example, I would like communicate like I'm explicitly taking a break right now. I might at times, but usually it's just kind of like my partner just kind of feels it out and waits to see if I'm
so it doesn't necessarily be the discussion.
Because we've communicated in the past about my libido being something that waxes and wanes.
Yeah, okay, good. So there's that understanding already that,
So, but I would say the why is just that I'm like, I happen to be someone whose sexual experience is not consistent, and so I just have to listen to my body and how I feel.
Yeah.
And if I don't feel like it, that's why I don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, it's good that you can, like, feel that out and be honest about it, or even, like, that your partner understands those moments aren't, you know, maybe personal, and that it's just, like, you need to step away.
Which can definitely be issues sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. So, during your time away from partnered sex, do you use toys or masturbation during that time, or are you completely shut off sexually? Like...
So, personally, I almost always usually still masturbate.
Yeah.
I will almost always, like, if I'm able to, I will still masturbate.
Yes.
But there is, like, kind of a difference between, like, I don't know, like, if my libido is, like, if I'm not feeling very sexual, if I'm not doing partnered sex, then I will usually just, like, use one single thing.
Yeah.
One thing, right straight to it, and just, like, have an orgasm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, you're like, just
I'm like, I'm just really doing that to kind of manipulate my brain, have a chemical, like, reaction.
Right.
Whereas, like, if I'm feeling a lot more sexual, I will, like, might have more elaborate masturbation.
So you use it as more of, like, self-love,
like
you know, instead of, like, oh, I'm so horny, but more just,
totally.
like, okay. No, that makes a lot of sense to me, yeah. So, in that regard, what are your views on celibacy? I know that's kind of hitting you at a different, like, angle a little bit, but yeah.
So, I mean, I know this is we're touching on, like, asexuality and stuff, too. Like, obviously, I mean, first of all, like, if someone doesn't feel like having sex, like, you literally shouldn't have sex. You just don't ever do it if you don't feel like it, ever, no matter what, if you can avoid it. But, I mean, I think, obviously, like, I guess... as long as you're choosing celibacy because that's actually what you want, then
then just
great.
do it. That's
fantastic. Like, go celibacy. But if you're choosing celibacy because you're, like, ashamed of your sex or sexuality, or because you feel like you have to for some reason, that's not good. That's not healthy.
How do you feel then about toys being used in celibacy? So, like, as a way to essentially kind of sate that need, you know, instead of having sex, I mean, would you say that that's kind of a great way to... Because I know that some people... I believe the common misconception is that if you're actively engaging in something like playing with yourself, then you're going to crave it more and more, and it's not going to sate it, and then that's going to make it more difficult to have self, which I know is kind of silly, but I feel like that's such a weird common misconception, right?
People think that way about all of their needs all the time. Yeah. Especially the ones that they feel ashamed about.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's not true for anything, really. If you have a need and you meet it, it's not going to get worse. It'll be met.
right? You can
You'll have
masturbate.
magic.
Yeah, it's like that's the magic of that. So you think it's probably totally healthy and great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And so you mentioned you were mentioning asexuality and what is your experience? What is asexuality for those who do not know about it? And do you have anyone in your life that's asexual? And what have you kind of learned from them about, their needs and wants for, like, sexually in general? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so asexuality, as I know it, is like a lack of sexual desire.
Okay.
Period. Sexual feelings, maybe a lack of being physically turned on ever or something like that, right? So for some people, there's asexual, that's literally their identity. They never experience like sexual attraction or interest or whatever. Even people who identify as asexual their whole lives can still experience attraction. It's just not a sexual attraction.
So the idea of masturbation kind of be like silly.
Most people who are asexual wouldn't ever masturbate, but I'm sure that there are people who are asexual who do.
Right.
And
maybe for different reasons.
For different reasons, exactly. Maybe they're doing it more for kind of the way that I'm doing it when I'm not feeling
to
sexual.
go to bed at night.
Yeah. And also, like, while asexuality can be like a constant identity, like all identity, it can be fluid. And so, like, for example, maybe for sexual trauma or for whatever other reason, there could be so many different reasons, like, someone can be asexual for periods of time. Yeah. So, like, I personally, it's also complicated because identity is always complicated, but I personally don't ever perceive myself as asexual because I always have sexual attraction. Yes. Even if I don't have sexual, like, stimulation, if that makes sense.
Like, somebody, you are attracted to someone
like,
even if you're not, like, aroused.
Yeah. So, that to me, but I don't know because I haven't actually spoken to a lot of asexual people. Maybe they're asexual people who are, like, still even experience that, but don't have other experiences, and so they still identify as asexual. Because identity is complicated, so
it's true.
It doesn't have to be any specific way.
Oh yeah, just like, but if you maybe are someone who isn't necessarily asexual in the sense that you don't find any attraction, but you do, and you're just not attracted to individuals, like, I think that totally. Kind of what you're talking about, before with, like, masturbation could be a great way to, like, do that because you're not touching anybody, you're just touching yourself. It's just fun. So, one last question for you. Do you have any advice for anyone who really wants to take a break from partnered sex and kind of, experience that with themselves or kind of step away from that and take a break overall and, like, how they would approach that with their partner and how they can kind of, like, do that themselves, essentially?
So I guess I want to say, like, first thing that if you're in a partnership and you don't want to engage in partnered sex, that doesn't mean that you have to break up with your partner.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a great, because I feel like people think, like, that means that's the end of the road. Like, that's it.
And, it might ultimately be that what's best for you in that situation is to end your partnership for whatever reason. Maybe that is what you need.
Right.
But that's not what has to happen. Nothing has to happen. But, so the second thing I would say is that, like, that you do have to have an explicit conversation with your partner about it. It would be really unfair, and I would go as far as to say cruel, even, to not communicate that and then just withhold sexual affection.
Then
because
think, is it
people
me?
really do need affection, and they often look for it in sexual affection. It's not the only kind of affection and intimacy that exists, but
it's
so if that's what the standard has been in your relationship, and then you suddenly cut that off, they're going to be really confused. That's
how can you not think something's wrong? Or,
exactly.
Yeah.
But, like, having explicit communication, talk to them about it. How can you still make your relationship work?
Yeah.
Is that something they can handle? Is that okay? Would you be open to them being sexual with other people is also a question. I know that's a really iffy thing for people, and I totally understand that. But, if you want to maintain that partnership, you can think about that. But don't do anything that's going to hurt yourself either.
Right, especially if you're taking a break in the first place for self-healing and
exactly.
And then how can you still find pleasure even if you're wanting to take a break from that partner,
Well, obviously you can masturbate, but also sexual pleasure isn't the only kind of pleasure.
Yep. Yeah.
Literally anything, like, if you're, like, literally anything, write a list. This is obviously, like, a really specific or random example, but just as a, like, practice, just write a list of things that bring you joy and pleasure. And then do them when you need pleasure. Like,
Yeah, tap into that list.
Someone else to do them with you.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. So, so if you're somebody who's wanting to take a break from partnered sex or just not into it or whatever the reason, it is something that you can still navigate in your relationship and you can still find pleasure and, you know, thanks for sharing. Oh, yeah.
Also, asexual people can still have relationships. And even with other people who are not asexual. That's one more thing.
So I feel like that applies to this too, like directly. Like this is. It's so broad, like in general, and it's just about like finding pleasure in yourself and having that communication. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yay! Again, I'm Tawny.
Thank you, Allana.
And we will be back, I'm sure. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.